Good morning. We're here for our one-year Bible study in the ESV version of the Bible, where we read an Old Testament reading, a New Testament reading, a Psalms and a Proverbs. And I was so excited. I just couldn't wait for us to get together for this Bible study. It's just amazing to me. I've been reading through this Bible in one of these one-year Bible study books for a long time, and I've never ever experienced just a prolonged encouragement, a prolonged intimacy, I guess, that day after day after day, these readings just bless my heart. And so I couldn't wait to talk to you about today's reading. We're in Deuteronomy 11 and 12 today. And again, this is an Old Covenant reading. It's the Old Testament. It is a historical text that's been documented for us. It's real live events. And I'll just be honest with you, most of the time in the past, when I've read through these historical texts, that's just exactly what I've been reading. I've been reading the story about the Israelites coming out from Egypt and coming to the Promised Land and all of the events that happen, and I read it like I'm reading a history book. Well, praise God, not this year. This year, this word has come alive in me, and day after day after day, I just can't begin to tell you how blessed I am, how encouraged I am. And this morning I had something kind of unique happen. If I had dreams last night, I don't remember what they were. That often is the case with me. So I don't know what would cause it or why it happened, and I'm telling you after the fact. I didn't recognize it while it was happening, that I had just allowed a nagging doubt to creep in. It wasn't an overwhelming doubt. I wasn't depressed. I wasn't battling worry or fatigue or stress. I didn't even know, again, the subconscious level versus conscious level. It was very subconscious. When I woke up this morning, I didn't realize that I was being tempted with a doubt. But after I read today's reading and got so blessed by it, that's when I had the revelation knowledge of what had happened with me. So I want to do my best, and I believe that God's going to guide me in my words. But I'm going to encourage each one of you, when we hang up today, to go back to Deuteronomy chapter 11 and chapter 12 and reread today's reading, because I believe you're going to read it with a new revelation and with a new light that's going to make a lamp unto your feet. And I want you to think about, Moses is talking to the Israelites. He knows that they're getting ready to cross over into the Promised Land. He knows he doesn't get to go, and he's wanting to pour everything into them he can get into them, so that they're ready. They're ready for the glory of God. And there's lots of promises in here. And so he refers oftentimes to the land, quote, land, because that is the physical promise that God gave them in this time in history. But for you and me, what does your land represent? What does the land that God has promised you represent? Who are you praying for right now? What prayer requests are on your list? What things are you believing God for? And I want to tell you that as you reread this text today, that the promise from God for you is represented by the land. And as you go through and you're reading the term land, that God promised you this land flowing with milk and honey, God promises you this, that is his answer today for you. Make this real, make it personal, because if we will seek God with all of our heart, he gives us our desires of our hearts. He realigns our desires to match his desires, because we now have the mind of Christ. And so whatever you've been believing God for, you've got answers for today. And whatever little tiny doubt was trying to nag at me this morning, it's gone. I'm telling you, it's gone. And it became a glorious morning, full of shouting and full of joy, with a direction for my day. This is the day the Lord hath made. I will rejoice and be glad in it. So it starts off in chapter 11, verse 7. For your eyes have seen all the great work of the Lord that he did. Moses is reminding them to do what you and I need to do on a regular basis. When those little nagging doubts come, you should grab your grateful journal and you ought to write down all the things you're grateful for. When those overbearing thoughts come, when stress sets in, when worry, anxiety sets in, you ought to go back to that journal and you ought to read all of the great things God has done for you, because they're too numerous for us to mention. So right here in this text, if we started right now and started naming all of the wonderful things God had done for the Israelites, we wouldn't have enough time today, because it's more numerous than they could mention. I mean, from manna down from heaven, water flowing out of a rock, to all kinds of things. I mean, it's just more numerous than we can mention. And so I find it interesting that that's how it starts off. Moses is telling them to think about, for your eyes have seen all the great work of the Lord that he did. And he goes on, you shall therefore keep the whole commandment that I command you today, that you may be strong. You're going to be strong, and you're going to go in, and you're going to take possession of your land that you're going to possess, and that you may live long. Here's our promise for a long life. God doesn't intend for our life to be cut short. He intends for us to live a long life in the land that God swore to your fathers to give you and to them and to your offspring. You're praying for grandchildren. You're praying for children. You're praying for brothers, sisters, neighbors. These are promises to stand on. A land flowing with milk and honey. For the land that you're entering to take possession of is not like the land of Egypt. It's not like your past. He's telling us to forget our past. Egypt was behind the Israelites, not in front of them. And he was telling them that the land they're getting ready to go in is not like it used to be. Your life in the future will not be like it used to be. Even if it's been a good life, it's going to be even better as you move forward in the land of promise, from which you have come, where you sowed your seed and irrigated it like a garden of vegetables. But the land, in verse 11, I want you to hear this, but the land that you're going over to possess is a land of hills and valleys, which drinks water by the rain from heaven. Now remember, they didn't even have rain before this time. A land that the Lord your God cares for. The eyes of the Lord your God are always upon your land, from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. That's what God promises us about our future. It goes on to say then, verse 13, if you will indeed obey my commandments that I command you today, to love the Lord your God and to serve him with all of your heart and with all of your soul, he will give the rain for your land. What he's telling you is that your land represents what you've been praying for. And the rain is what will nourish it and cause it to flourish. And you'll have harvest on that land, on that promise, on that thing you've been asking God for so long. Then he goes on in verse 16, and he's going to warn us. So God is warning us, just as Moses is warning the Israelites. Take care lest your heart be deceived. And I'm going to tell you to bow your head today and ask God, where is there deception in your life? Where are you absolutely convinced that you're right to the point that you aren't open to hear God correct you? It happens to all of us. We have to be so in tune with that spirit in us that I can just tell you that if we're in a position of having to defend ourselves that we're right, chances are you're deceived. Now let that sink in. If you're in a position that you're having to use your words to defend your rightness, you're probably deceived, because the unity and the coexisting, the cohabitation, the co-creation of God's spirit in us with our spirit doesn't have to be defended. So he's telling them to take care lest you're deceived. And I'm telling you guys, asking, is there an area in your life where you're deceived? Is there an area in your life that you're justifying what you're doing? Because justification equals deception. And then he goes on, and you turn aside and serve other gods and you worship them. Then the anger of the Lord will be kindled. What he's telling you is that when we let these little strongholds in our mind start, worry, stress, guilt, condemnation, just on and on, they become idols. Just like he was warning them. He spent a good deal of the reading today warning them not to get any idols in their life, to keep God, the only God in their life. We don't want to let our thoughts turn away from God in any capacity, whether it's our health, whether it's our finances, whether it's our children, whether it's our loved ones, whether it's our spouses, we don't want those thoughts to become idols in our life, and he warns us about that. And then it goes on, verse 22, for if you will be careful to do all this commandment that I command you to do, loving the Lord your God, he wants to be first. He's a jealous God. He wants to be first in your life, walking in all his ways and holding fast to him. Then the Lord will drive out all these nations before you. Anything that's come against you, God, not you, God will drive out. And you will possess nations greater and mightier than yourselves, even bigger than what's on your prayer list today. God's going to provide for you. Every place on which the sole of your foot treads will be yours. Oh, I hope you're getting this the way I got this. Whatever little nagging doubt I had just flew out of my mind. God drove it out by my obedience to listen to his word and to read his word. And then on verse 24, every place, that's the one I want to repeat it. Every place on which the sole of your foot tread shall be yours. Verse 25, no one shall be able to stand against you. What promises? How can we worry when we have promises like this? And then verse 26, see, I'm setting before you today a blessing and a curse. The blessing, if you obey the commandments of the Lord your God, which I command you today, and the curse, if you do not obey. So now, listen to me. This is old covenant reading. And those curses were very physical. They were very real. But we're new covenant and we live under grace. And so that means we don't have to fear curses. But there is a spiritual reality that exists in our life that if we just turn away from God, then it feels as though we're living under the curse again. It doesn't mean in the spiritual world we really are, because we're his and we can never, ever, ever be separated from the love of God. Never, because of what Jesus Christ, the ultimate sacrifice, the Lamb, did for us. But I am telling you, when we turn away from what he's telling us to do, then the feelings and the emotions in our body take over, and it feels as though we're living back under the curse again. And so we got to turn back and get right back into rightness, into divine alignment with the God of the universe who sent his son to die for us, and understand we live under grace. Under grace, it's always blessings. Always blessings. There is no curse under the grace of God. It's blessings. And so then it goes on, verse 31, for you are to cross over the Jordan. You are to move forward into the promises that God is giving to each one of you individually, to go into and take possession. Take possession. Stop thinking that the blessings of God are at arm's reach and you can never just quite get there. Be content in where you're at. Be content in the blessings God's given us today, with the knowledge by faith that the best is yet to come, because that's what all of these scriptures are telling us, is the best is yet to come. And in verse 2, chapter 12, verse 2, you shall surely destroy all the places where the nations who you possess serve their gods on high mountains and on the hills and every tree. He's telling us that we'll destroy all the idols in our life. They'll be non-existent. They'll be smashed to smithereens when we obey our Father and we turn to him. Therefore you shall go, and there you shall bring your burnt offerings and your sacrifices, your tithes and contributions that you present. Go back and read this. There are instructions for us. There are words for us. And the Lord your God, and you shall rejoice, and you and your household, in all that you undertake. You can't fail. We win, folks. it tells us right there in verse number 7, in all that you undertake, all that you set your hand to, in which the Lord your God has blessed you. You shall not do according to all that we're doing here today, everyone doing whatever is right in his own eyes, for you have not as yet come to the rest. He's promising us rest. See, we've come to the rest. Jesus Christ took care of everything that they suffered from back then, and we get to have rest. We are in rest with our Heavenly Father. In verse 12, and you shall rejoice before the Lord your God, you and your sons and daughters, your male servants and your female servants, everybody around us. We take the blessings to them. The blessings are in us. The blessings are on us. The blessings are around us. And the people that comes into our presence will be blessed by our presence, because as he is in this world, so are we. Verse 20, when the Lord your God enlarges your territory. So all those other scriptures took away the nagging doubt, reset the promise of the blessing I live in every single day, and then he promised me to enlarge my territory. How about you? Did he promise to enlarge your territory? Reread it and see what God says to you. And then once again in verse 25, that with you and with your children after you. That's promises for generations to come, folks. Why would we worry about our kids when we have so many promises? God never leaves out our children. He never leaves them out in our blessings and our promises. Verse 28, be careful to obey all these words I command you, that it may go well with you and with your children, once again, those children, after you forever. Forever. Do you get that? Forever. And when you do what is good and right in the sight of the Lord your God. Hallelujah. What a wonderful reading we had today. In Luke chapter 8 is when Jesus got on the boat, we went right from these promises right into a storm. Because Jesus got on the boat, and what did he do? He went underneath and he went to sleep. Talk about rest. A physical picture of the rest God just spoke to us of in Deuteronomy chapter 11. And here we are in Luke 8, and Jesus is resting in the bottom of the boat. And the disciples went to him and said, Master, Master, we are perishing. They absolutely believed they were dying, a physical death. And then all he did is he rebuked the wind, and he spoke to them and said, where is your faith? You know, back in Deuteronomy, they were in the wilderness. They weren't in the promised land. But you know what? This is what Luke tells us, is that we have dominion and authority over our wilderness. What's creating the wilderness in your life? Speak to that wilderness to be gone. Take authority over the things that's causing you stress and anxiety and worry, and live in the rest, just like Jesus did. And they marveled at him and said, you know, who then is this that he commands even winds and water, and they obey him? He commands the storm in his life to leave. And that's what we're supposed to do. As he is, so are we in this world. Verse 38, the man from whom the demons had gone begged that he might be with him. But Jesus sent him away, saying, return to your home and declare how much God has done for you. So this is what I'm going to end on today. In Luke chapter 8, it goes on to talk about Legion having all of the demons cast out by Jesus. And so it ends up with verse 38, the man from whom the demons had gone begged that he might be with him. So after the demons were gone, all Legion wanted to do was be with Jesus. That's all we want to do, is be with Jesus. And we are with Jesus because we're one with the Father. But here's the deal. This was Jesus' words to him, and this is Jesus' words to us today. Return to your home. So be where you're at, your home, and declare how much God has done for you. You're having stress in your life. You're having worry about the future. You don't know how a situation is going to turn out. You declare all that God has done for you. Get that grateful journal out, and you write in that grateful journal. You get that prayer journal out, and you look at all of the times you've listed when God has answered your prayers. He always hears us. He never leaves us. He never deceives us. He never, ever, ever goes away from us. So I just thank you for listening in today. I thank you for the promises of God. I thank you that his word is alive in us. And I love each and every one of you. Have a great day.